Tools. Egyptian carpenters had access to a variety of lumber in the Nile Valley. Local woods included the date palm, used for roofing beams, the acacia for pegs and dowels, and the sycamore fig for coffins, chests, and tables. Highly prized woods, such as cedar and ebony, were imported from Lebanon, Syria, and Africa to make furniture and statues. Egyptian carpenters were highly skilled and often held well-paid jobs. Many of their tools have survived to the present day. Figurine. This elaborate cosmetic container is delicately carved in the shape of a Nubian servant girl. Kingly carving. This miniature figure of the mummified Tutankhamun is expertly carved. The king, wearing his royal headcloth, lies between the hawk god and the human-headed bird that represents his soul. Serrated metal blade. Metal blade bound with a leather. Wooden shaft. Chopper. The axe appears in the hieroglyphs for the word for carpenter. Axes were mainly used to cut down trees and to hack wood roughly into shapes. Headrest. Egyptians relaxed with their heads supported by a pillow resting on a wooden stand. Air could circulate below the neck and the head was raised to avoid contact with insects or scorpions. This headrest is in the shape of a desert hare. Adze. This tool was used for planing surfaces such as boat hulls to a smooth finish. It was also used to carve large funerary chests. Saw. Egyptian saws were pulled through wood, unlike modern saws, which are pushed and pulled. Tomb scenes show carpenters using saws like this. Goat's head. Chairs, boxes, and chests were often decorated with animal features. A chair could have legs in the shape of a lion's paws, or carved snakes sitting on its arms. The small fragment on the right has been exquisitely carved to show the horn, curly fleece, and beard of a goat. Boring job. To bore a hole in a plank, the carpenter used a drill consisting of a metal point in a wooden shaft. He placed the drill where he wanted the hole to be and rotated the cutting edge with a bow. Bradal. A bradal made starter holes so that the drill could grip. It also made marks to show where the pegs would go. Twine. Wooden bow. Men at work. These carpenters were working on a casket that has been inlaid with colorful materials. One hammers out a hole for a peg while the other polishes the lid. Chisel. Carpenters use chisels for intricate carving and for cutting hieroglyphs into wooden surfaces. Metal drill bit. Hare's ears support pillow and head. Smoothing stone. The rough surfaces left after carving could be smoothed down using a pebble. Pebbles were also used to give furniture a highly polished finish. Drill. Carpenters used a bow drill to make holes for the pegs that joined pieces of wood together. This bow drill is well worn. Hunting and fishing. Farming produced more food than people needed in ancient Egypt, so hunting was mainly done for sport. The king and his courtiers went to the deserts to hunt wild bulls, antelopes, and lions. The bulls would be herded into an enclosure and picked off one by the pharaoh and his chariot. Fish from the Nile were usually caught in nets or with hooks. Bird hunting was also popular. The hunter would use a boat to approach the papyrus reeds where the wild fowl were resting. When the birds flew up in the air, he would hurl a throw stick at them. Family outing. This nobleman is using a snake-shaped throw stick to hunt birds in the papyrus marshes. Accompanying him on the trip are his wife, daughter, and cat, which has already caught 3 birds. Arrows. Egyptian arrows were made of reeds and were tipped with ivory, bone, flint, obsidian, or metal. Flat tips to weaken animal by piercing hide. Sharp tip to kill outright. Cleft end for bowstring. The hippo could cause havoc among boats on the Nile, so teams of men would go to hunt hippos, gradually weakening them by repeated spearing until they collapsed. Throw stick. Shaped like boomerangs, wooden throw sticks were hurled at birds to kill or stun them. Desert spoils. Desert hares are often shown in Egyptian hunting scenes. Antelopes and gazelles were also found in the desert, and ostrich eggs were a desert delicacy. Hooks. Fish were caught by copper or bronze hooks, then gutted and dried in the sun. Weights. Like fishermen today, the Egyptians used the lead weights to keep their fishing nets under the water. Fishing net. Nets made from reed and papyrus twine were designed to trap both birds and fish. They were kept in position by reed floats. This net on the right is about 3,000 years old. Courtiers used this type of harpoon to test their skill. Prong to attach rope. Harpoons. Metal harpoons were used to catch fish and large game, such as the hippo. In ancient Egypt, the hippo was associated with the god Seth, who caused chaos. In the home. Houses in ancient Egypt were built from sun-dried mud bricks. The mud was strengthened with a mixture of straw and pebbles, then molded in wooden frames. The walls of the houses were covered with plaster, and the insides were often painted with scenes from nature. Windows were small to keep out the heat. Wealthy families had large houses that contained a hall, a kitchen, several bedrooms, and stairs leading up to the roof. Around the pool. Wealthy families often had a pool in the yard that was stocked with lotuses and fish. The water was changed regularly to keep it fresh. Home comforts. This home belonged to a successful official, the royal scribe Nakht. Grill windows high on the walls kept out light and dust, while vents trapped the cool north wind. There would also have been a garden and a pool. Soul house. This model shows the house of a poorer family. The model, known as a soul house, would have been placed in the tomb of the owner for use in the afterlife. The entrance is a low arched doorway, and the models of food items have been placed in the walled courtyard. Empty vessels. A variety of Egyptian cups, jars, and pots still survive today. Among the earliest are stoneware vessels made over 5,000 years ago from mottled stone. Later, potters used a material called faience, made by heating up powdered quartz in a mold. Some Egyptian jars had pointed bases because they were designed to rest on stands. Roof terrace. Drinking cup. Water, wine, or beer could have been drunk from this beautiful faience cup decorated with a lotus flower pattern. Wine jar. This wine jar was made in about 1000 BCE. It is made of faience and it is decorated with diamond and leaf patterns. Bird in hand. Carved over 5,000 years ago from a stone called breccia, this vase was used to store oil or other liquids. Fruit basket. Baskets were made from palm leaves or strips of papyrus. They were often used as household containers. This one holds 2 dom palm fruit. Offerings for the deceased. Fanning the fire. The servant is fanning charcoal to make a fire. The fire provided both heat for cooking and a warm place for servants to gather and talk. These Egyptian chairs look graceful from the side. Food and drink. The rich mud deposited by the Nile flood allowed farmers to grow barley and wheat, which were used to make bread and beer. Farmers also grew vegetables such as leeks, lentils, and lettuce, and fruits such as gourds, figs, and melons. Grapes from the Nile Delta were made into wine or dried into raisins. The wealthy enjoyed lavish banquets where courses of duck, gazelle, or roasted ox were followed by cakes sweetened with honey or dates. Poorer people would have eaten less meat and poultry and more fish. Butchers at work. This model shows an ox being slaughtered for food. In the vineyard, 2 men pluck bunches of grapes from the vines to make wine. They would then crush the grapes by stepping on them. Strainer. Made from mashed loaves of barley bread, Egyptian beer was very thick and had to be strained through a basket or with a wooden siphon. Bread. More than 3,000 years old, this bread was baked from barley dough. Its texture is tough. Grit sometimes got in the flour during grinding. A Syrian soldier serving the pharaoh Akhenaten, shown drinking beer through a siphon. Grapes. Most grapes grew in the north of Egypt. Both red and green grapes provided the fermenting juice for wine. Preparations for straining. Delicious dates. Dates were eaten fresh at harvest time in August or could be dried in a sweet mash. The sap from dates was also used to make wine. Sycamore figs. The fruit of the sycamore fig was highly prized in ancient Egypt. Baboons loved figs and are often shown helping themselves from bowls or straight from the trees. Modern fig. Palm tree fruit. These dom palm fruit come from a 3,000-year-old tomb offering. The outer case is so tough it could be used as the top end of a drill. Large pomegranate produced by modern agriculture. Egyptian banquet. Scribes and nobles enjoyed a wide variety of meat, poultry, and fruit, as shown in the band banquet scene. The courses included cakes, figs, grapes, the head of a calf, the heart and leg of an ox, a goose, and a twist of onions. Pomegranates. The pomegranate was introduced to Egypt from the Middle East. Its skin may have been used to produce a yellowish dye. This dish contains fruit that were once part of a tomb offering. Ancient fruit. Song and dance. The Egyptians enjoyed life to the full. At large public festivals, people were entertained by singing, dancing, and music from flutes, harps, and castanets. Music was also part of everyday life. Farmers would sing to their oxen to make them work better, and winemakers crushed their grapes to the sound of rhythm sticks being clapped together. No one knows what Egyptian music sounded like, but an orchestra at a banquet was likely to have included string, wind, and percussion sections. Twine holds discs together. Dancing girls shake their bodies to the rhythm of the music. Double crown of Upper and Lower Egypt. Singing and dancing. This section from a tomb painting shows a group of dancers and an orchestra of women playing a song in praise of nature. 5-stringed harp. Harps varied greatly in size. Some were as tall as the player. The number of strings also varied, from 4 to more than 20. The king's head may indicate that the harp belonged to a court musician. Head of king wearing striped headcloth. Wooden body. Lotus blossom design. Crash. Cymbals were usually made of bronze and were used to emphasize the rhythm of a piece of music with their sharp metallic clashes. Hawk's head terminal. Priestess carrying a sistrum. Discs rattled when shaken. Tuning peg. Animal gut strings. Flute. The pipe or flute is one of the most ancient instruments that were usually made of reeds or wood. Head of Hathor. Wedjat eye tattoo. Sacred rattle. The sistrum was carried by priestesses at ceremonies. It was linked with the goddess Hathor, who represented joy, music, and dance. Clappers. These bone clappers would have been joined by papyrus twine and held in one hand like castanets. Playing the harp. This wooden model of a girl playing a harp was placed in a tomb to provide music in the afterlife. In real life, she would have rested the harp on a stand while playing it. Lyre and flute players from a painting at Thebes. Clothes and cloth. From early times, people in Egypt wore simple clothes made of linen. The cloth was woven from the fibers of a flowering plant called flax, which was widely cultivated in Egypt. Most Egyptian men wore short skirts called kilts, which were tied in a knot at the waist. Women wore long, tight-fitting dresses under beautifully pleated cloaks. The Egyptians had clever ways of protecting their clothes. Soldiers covered the backs of their kilts with leather netting, and servants wore beaded nets over their dresses. The Egyptians learned how to dye their clothes in colored patterns from the Middle East, but the technique was never widespread. Reinforced edge. Man and wife. Both men and women wore braided wigs in ancient Egypt. Leather sandals. These sandals are made from pieces of ox leather sewn with papyrus twine. Leather was rarely used for footwear in Egypt. Reed sandals. Papyrus and other reeds were the most common materials for sandals. Egyptian priests were forbidden to wear any other material on their feet. Wigs. The courtiers on this wall relief are wearing typical wigs. Egyptian wigs were made of human hair and stuck in place with beeswax. Twine securing strap. Royal statue. The statue dates from the reign of Akhenaten. See page 10. It could be a statue of Nefertiti, Akhenaten's queen, or one of her daughters. She is shown wearing a very fine, pleated garment of royal linen. In the grove. This board was used for pleating linen. The damp cloth would be pressed into the groves. Flax comb. The heads of the flax fibers were removed with a long comb. Then the stems were soaked, beaten, and combed again to prepare them for spinning. Linen sheet. Types of linen in Egypt range from coarse cloth like this to the finest gauze worn by royalty. Spindle. The flax fibers were spun on sticks called spindles, which were weighted down by a stone wheel or whorl. Spinner. This girl is drawing out the twisted fibers which are attached to the rotating spindle. All that glitters. Egyptian mines between the Nile and the Red Sea coast contained vast quantities of gold. This precious metal was either beaten into shape or cast in molds. Egyptian jewelers also had access to semi-precious stones from the deserts, such as the orange-red carnelian, green feldspar, and mauve amethyst. Some stones were imported from abroad. Turquoise came from the Sinai Peninsula, and rich blue lapis lazuli came from Afghanistan. Rings of gold being brought to Egypt from Nubia. Bracelet. Made for Prince Nemereth. This bracelet shows the god Horus as a child. See page 27. Like many children in Egyptian art, he is shown sucking his finger. Cowrie shell shows wish of wearer to have children. Hieroglyphs give name of owner. Lucky girdle. This girdle or belt contains lucky charms made of electrum, a mixture of gold and silver, and beads of carnelian, amethyst, lapis lazuli, and turquoise. A star is born. The star was born on a headdress called a diadem. This painting shows a Roman priest wearing a similar diadem. Gold earrings. Gold diadem. Ear ornaments. Many Egyptians had pierced ears. The holes in the earlobes would have needed to be fairly large for these studs. Jasper stud. Faience stud. Glass stud. Jewelers at work. Many objects were made by heating metal until it was liquid, then pouring it into molds. Falcon pectoral. The pectoral was a type of jewelry worn on the chest. The frame of this falcon was originally filled with pieces of faience, glass, and gems. Metal strips bent into shape and soldered onto base. Talon holds the Shenu symbol, meaning eternity. Traces of original inlay. Gift of a king. Outstanding service to the state was rewarded by gifts of jewelry. The king would drop collars or bracelets from a window to nobles waiting below. This collar has 3 rows of gold rings threaded together on twine. Fish amulets to prevent drowning. Finger rings. Rings often contained a swiveling stone in the shape of a scarab beetle. See page 24. These scarabs are made of steatite that was easy to carve. Steatite and gold ring. Scarab. Steatite and gold ring. Silver ring. Hair worn in a side lock represented youth. Beards or side locks of youth. He, the god of millions of years, symbolizes long life. Body beautiful. Beauty and fashion were very important to the Egyptians. They went to great lengths to adorn themselves with cosmetics, wigs, floral garlands, and fine linen. Both men and women used eye paint made from minerals crushed on fine slate palettes. Many of their beauty aids, including combs, mirrors, and cosmetic holders, have survived to the present day. Tube with royal inscription. Applicators. These were used for scooping, mixing, and applying pigment. Malachite. Containers. Ground minerals for eye paint were mixed with water and kept in tubes like these. Craftsman's masterpiece. The mother duck's back wings slide across to give access to the face cream inside. Perfume pomades. Wigs would often be topped with cones of scented animal fat, which melted slowly. Mirror. Courtiers used mirrors made of polished bronze or copper. Royal mirrors were made of silver. Fragrant massage. This noblewoman is having water poured over her while being massaged. A friend holds a flower for her to smell. Galena. Polished metal reflective surface. Iron oxide. Tweezers. Pigments. The Egyptians made green eye paint from malachite, a copper ore. A lead ore known as galena produced black eye paint, kohl. Cheeks and lips could be reddened with ochres made from iron minerals. Fat would usually be added to the makeup to help its application. Hair. Priests and women used tweezers to remove hair. Tongs were used to curl the hair. Razors. Bronze or copper razors were probably very uncomfortable to use unless in the hands of professional barbers. Hair curler. Double ends for different size curl. Curl spoon. The handle of this container represents a bunch of flowers. The top swivels to reveal the cosmetic inside. Wooden comb. Egyptians combed their wigs with ivory and wooden combs. Wigs were often long and heavy with up to 3 layers of curls. Touching up. Here a noblewoman called If wet, uses a mirror to dab powder on her cheeks. Hairpins. These were used to keep curls or perfume pomades in place.